There's enough states to the Arabs. There is not Palestinian nation. There is not. There was not a nation before we came here, and they are not today. They came from many lands and states. They were Bedouin. Okay, that's what they was. There was not Arabs here before we came here. There was only some hundreds, okay, 100 or 100,000. This is not what we are talking today. And we have to look at the eyes and everyone in the world and say, that's not their land.
The settlers in Hebron and people like them have a clear-cut solution for the conflict. That is ethnic cleansing, pure and simple. All the Arabs, all the Palestinians have to leave Palestine.
In the cave of the patriarch, sacred to both Arabs and Jews, Baruch Goldstein opened fire with an automatic rifle.
Entered the mosque in an army uniform and opened fire.
A settler opened fire in a crowded mosque in the West Bank town of Hebron. At least 40 Palestinians were killed, scores more wounded.
Minutes earlier, these people had been praying, celebrating the Arab fast of Ramadan. They were mercilessly gunned down by an Israeli settler.
It is one of the most militant settlements on the West Bank, and he was among its most militant members.
I must remind you that Goldstein not only killed so many Palestinians, he is directly responsible to all this wave of suicide bombers who started only after his massacre. Would I be a Palestinian? I can tell you, when you see Hebron and you see what's happening to them, you can only come to one conclusion, that the Palestinians are one of the most tolerant people in the world. Even I would say one of the less violent people in the world. Because any people would explode if people would have done what they are doing there.
That treat us as less than human, and not only that, you're going to take our land and deprive us of all of our rights. Nobody can accept that.
We're going now to visit one of our friends, El-Azhar family, Hashim El-Azhar, who lives in Tel Rumeida. For sure, the main and the right way to go to Tel Rumeida would be probably up the hill in the junction, take a left. But they're a settlement, and the Palestinians can't walk there in front of the settlement. Their only way in and out the house is through the way that we'll go down.
You see, this is the part of Qurtuba school, as you see from here. And you see the girls here, they are waiting the children until they come from here. And as they said, as you see, Idbakh al-Arab, kill all of the Arabs. They said in Arabic, Idbakh al-Arab, kill all of the Arabs. This is what they said. And this is Israel. Israel, there is no Palestine. This is the land of Israel.
The settlers teach their children to hate Arabs before they start walking. They bring them up with this hatred. The first words they speak are swear words against Arabs, even if it is clear that they attack us. And to prove it, we bring along photos and videos to show that they attacked us and came onto our land. In the end, it's always our fault, and we're the only ones arrested.
You see the guys down the stairs, they are throwing stones to them. And you see, this is the car of the police, and always nothing happens.
Sorry, who is throwing the stones?
The settlers, the guys downstairs and the girls up the hill, they attacked the students.
We can't just say this is a crazy group and we have nothing to do with it. We Israelis, we all carry responsibility to what is happening in Hebron. And therefore, so many times I feel myself deeply ashamed to be Israeli when I see those scenes, because it's on my behalf. Those people are there under my government, under my state, and I'm part of it, and each of us Israelis are part of it, and each of us Israelis are paying the price.
Beating, hitting, insulting is one of settlers' practices of their daily life on daily basis. And that's again reflected in a number of attacks that took place against internationals who will come in and they're outraged by the way that these settlers are behaving, and they try to reduce to the least number of incidents of beatings against the Palestinians, and they are seen by the settlers as misrepresenting history, and that it's a given fact that we are the chosen people, and you as internationals are supposed to be actually siding by us against Arabs and Palestinians, because this is what God has said.
Hello. As a black South African, I can't comprehend what Israel is trying to do to the Palestinians. You know, they were trying to compare the two scenarios, but for me that they're incomparable. We didn't have high walls. We never had a single exit and entry point. We never had a street that was per se only for the other group of people, but we could one way or the other go to the same town, enter the same shops, but here it's not comparable. You know, they usually call it apartheid, but for me it's incomparable. This for me is very distressful.
Hey, Nazi. I'm old enough to remember what a Nazi is.
And every time they are international people, they've got no problem with the settlers.
Oh, yes, they have problems with the settlers too, yes.
It's a terrorist girl. She's not supposed to be here.
You've got to have a right to protect Arabs.
Get her out of here. Get her out of here.
You get her out of here. Why not?
Of course we oppose these groups being here. For them to come from where they're coming from, it would be if I walked into a hospital and walked into an operating room and said, I'm here, let me help. You know, the doctor's got the patient open and you've got 5 doctors working and the anesthesiologist and the nurses, and here I am, I'm, all set, give me a knife. They'd look at me and say, but you don't know anything. You're going to kill him. And the kids know this as well as we do.
Shabbat Shalom, no picture. We don't want picture.
Leave. You need to. You can't come in here. This is not your house.
We killed Jesus. We're proud of it. Where are you?
I would like to see the international community support us and give us backing in this activity, and to understand that their homes are now in danger. You see, the Islamic terrorism attacks the whole world now. And if we do not put a wall against this terror, all Europe is in danger. All the Western society.
This is my land, you...
This is not your land. It belongs to these families.
Land, you son of a bitch. We're gonna kill you and the Palestinians. You Nazis. This is my house. This is my land. God gave it to me.
Most of the Israelis have not a slightest idea what's going on in Hebron. The media hardly shows them. Nobody wants them to know. And we became a society which cares only about itself, and even this, less and less. And all the rest, we have this wonderful excuse of security. If this doesn't work, we can always bring up the Holocaust. citing the late Golda Meir, who said that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. And that's the way of thinking. And human rights is really something for European salons, but not for our reality. We are not dealing with it. We deal only with our fate.
I find it very hard to understand how they can feel like that. And equating us with Nazis and what we're doing with the Holocaust seems to me a quite extraordinary reading of what's gone on in the last 60 years. You know, I was a child in Britain during the Second World War, when the entire efforts of the whole nation were devoted to defeating Nazism and Hitler. So, yeah. And where we welcomed and cheered on as a young woman the foundation of the State of Israel, as it seemed in the faced with the horrific discovery of the extent of what had gone on in the Holocaust, that for the Jewish people to have a land of their own seemed so entirely right. And of course, I didn't understand that this was going to be at the expense of the existing local inhabitants.
You're swimming in hypocrisy, all of you. You're all a bunch of anti-Semites, and you want to see the end of the Jews. And because of that, you think you use the Arabs. You don't listen. You use the Arabs.
There is an imminent corruption process, moral corruption process, that is part of occupation. When you take an 18-year-old man, you dress him with uniform, you give him a gun and the power to control people, it's like a math equation. 1 + 1 ends 2, this ends of abusing Palestinians, destroying their property, looting, shooting against the orders, or with the orders and hurting innocent people. It's something that you can't avoid when you're there. The real story is the political power that settlers have. It's the power to influence the commanders, the brigade officer. You know, he's the sheriff of Hebron, right? He controls everything. He sneezes, all Hebron feels it. And every brigade commander of Hebron knows that if he will confront the settlers, he'll finish his army career. When I came here in 2001, this building was still full. This building, so like around 3-4 Palestinian families used to still live here. They were the only one who were allowed to walk in this road and through the gates. Today you can see this building is totally empty. This building has like 3 or 4 families left inside. This building is a very actual story, this building. You can see how it's blocked now. The settlers invaded here in the beginning of February, and according to Israeli law, if someone invades to a property that doesn't earn it, if you don't take him out at the first 30 days, the only way to take him out is through a very long legal procedure. And during all history of this place, every time when they invaded, they were never taken out in the first 30 days. This time, it was the first incident in all the history of the settlement here in Hebron that law was enforced really in time.
On the one hand, you have massive investments to set up communities there. I mean, what look like permanent towns and villages of Jews living in the occupied territories, but the West Bank has not been annexed. Military law continues to apply. So it's quite ambivalent in that sense. What is the future of those territories? I mean, in some cases, Israel maybe is operating contrary to its long-term interests, that areas that now the government is talking about pulling out of. I mean, we have invested a lot of money there. It will now take a lot of money to uproot those people.
אני מבקש מכולם להתפנות מרצונכם הטוב והחופשי.
שלוחי השטן! שלוחי השטן!
Jews who evict other Jews will be damned.
To be a good Jew is to be faithful to justice and to truth, not to a political regime. It can be a king, it can be a prime minister, never mind. And this is what I would like to see all the moral people in the world that don't obey to sinners and corrupted regimes.
The Arabs are over there. This is the Israeli side. You should be evicting the Arabs, not these sacred children. You can't be Jewish if you turn against fellow Jews. How can you do this?
You're a reporter from where?
From Israel. I'm not talking to you. Are you because you're not because you're not. Are you pulling the people out of the house?
No, I want to
right.
ask
So
you
I'm
a
telling people
question.
that I'm telling people. Listen, I'll talk to you next week. I'll have coffee in Jerusalem. Okay. You're crazy.
You're persecuting the holy children. The Arabs over there. Go after the Arabs.
My fear today, my problem that I have today isn't with Hebron. My problem today is with the continued existence of the Jewish people here in the state of Israel, because we're committing suicide. We're virtually committing suicide, and this is what we have to stop. Could it happen? Could an Israeli government decide to pick us up and throw us out of our homes in Hebron? Yeah, it could. And it could happen anywhere today. However, if that happens, I think that we're dealing with an existential threat to the state of Israel, and that has to be stopped.
They're throwing rocks. Watch out.
Without returning the whole West Bank, there will not be a just peace. There will not be a lasting peace. There will not be a peace. And you know, time is running out, and with 250,000 settlers in the West Bank, it's becoming almost too late, maybe too late already, because it will not be very easy to evacuate them. But without this, nothing will move, and we will go just from one war to the other.
We stole the olives. There is nothing. That's what.
Get them out of there.
From the international law perspective, all settlements are illegal. The Israeli citizens should not be living in Hebron. It is occupied territory. You cannot have the occupiers' people living in that territory. But when you compound that with the reality of Hebron, I mean, you have a few hundred settlers, tens of thousands of Palestinians, and the Palestinians are paying a very severe price in restrictions on movement, in being subjected to violence, in all of this harassment and suffering as the result of a very small settler population. So if we are calling for all the settlements to be dismantled, it's clear that Hebron has to be first as far as we are concerned.
It's their policy. They want to push us to leave. They attack us. They want to make us suffering in our life. Also destroy our economic situation.
Look, man, look, you are a stealer. Don't steal our olives. You are welcome. Come to my house. If you are Palestinian, Palestinian,
this is our land here. This is our land here. This is my land. No, this is my land here.
It's our land. What's your use?
Look! He's attacking us with a shovel.
There's no real debate about this in Israel. The ordinary Israeli has no idea what's happening there. He does not know, he does not want to know. We see here something which we have known in the darkest day of our history, namely that after it was finished, everybody said, I didn't know. No one told me. I did not know. I didn't know. I didn't know. Of course they did not know, because they did not want to know.
My main complaint, my main scream, my main anger is toward the government who enables all this. Because you see crazy extremists, fundamentalists, you have in every society. The problem is how much power do they have and how much freedom do they have to implement their crazy ideas, their violent ideas, their vicious ideas.
Here, pick up the olives. Here are the olives. Olives. Here are the olives. Take them. Take them all. Don't touch me. Why do you want me to stop? What do you want me to stop? This is not respect. You call this respect? These terrorists on my terrace?
During all the human being history, a lot of disasters human beings did. Much worse things than the occupation, even in Hebron. But still, very few people did it. A bit more people benefit from it. But a majority of human beings in the world were silenced with it. And this is the problem. People must understand that in this situation, you have only two camps. Either you're for it or against it. Being silenced is being for it. Not everyone has to, to live a life of resistance. But everyone is obligated to stop being silent.